Dear Ambassador, Lord Mayor, good evening and welcome to all of you. My name is Ahmed Lindboe and I'm the newly elected Mayor of Oslo. It's an honor for me to welcome you on this special occasion, on the evening before the lighting on the Christmas tree in Trafalgar Square. I'm pleased that, together with the Nobel Peace Center and the Norwegian Embassy, we are hosting this event in London for the 4th time. Tomorrow evening, we will light up the Christmas tree. This is a long tradition going back to 1947. It's a token of gratitude for the help and support Norway received from the British people during the Second World War. Today, the Christmas tree also symbolizes solidarity and friendship between our two cities. Tonight's cultural event, it's about solidarity and peace and how we can build respect for human rights. Not unlike the symbolic value of the Christmas tree. Culture is important. It's a tool for connecting people and countries. It can be a strong force for building peace. Culture and music can also be a way to express injustice and therefore a catalyst for change. Like London, Oslo is a city with a variety of cultural activities. Oslo is also a city of peace and the home of a Nobel Peace Prize. We are therefore grateful for the collaboration with the Nobel Peace Center. We cooperate on several events during the year, the most known being the Nobel Peace Prize award ceremony that takes place in Oslo City Hall on the 10th of December each year, which is actually this Sunday. Also this year, the Nobel Peace Prize, it's of great relevance. It's about human rights, freedom for all, and democracy. To stand up for fundamental human rights is more important than ever. The Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Narges Mohammadi, and the movement she represents are courageous women in Iran, fighting for the right to sing, to dance, and express themselves freely in their home country. Tonight, we will hear how music can be a catalyst for positive change. Music can be a significant driver for social change, a movement or a symbolic of social engagement that changes the course of history. Music can be the soundtrack to what goes on in our society. The songs that change the world refers to the fact that some songs, they do more than entertain people. They bring awareness, inspire change, they empower people, and give hope. With the concept of songs that change the world, the Nobel Peace Center uses music to address important topics. They wish to use music to lower the bar for becoming familiar with the challenges facing society today. Soon, we'll hear about the connection between music and culture and social development and peace. This evening's artist is Metteson, a talented upcoming Norwegian singer, songwriter, and actor. Metteson has chosen a song he believes is important to society. We will hear more about this later from tonight's host, Asbjørn Slettemark. Asbjørn is one of Norway's top music experts. He will guide us through a talk about the songs that change the world, and I'm so proud to have both Metteson and Asbjørn with us tonight. On behalf of the City of Oslo, I would like to thank the Nobel Peace Center for the cooperation making this event possible. I'm also grateful to the Norwegian Embassy for their support and cooperation. Thanks also to the Conduit for hosting us this December evening. I also hope to see many of you tomorrow at Trafalgar Square when we light up the Norwegian Christmas tree. We'll also hear more from Metteson tomorrow at the lighting ceremony. So again, I bid you all a warm welcome and hope you will enjoy tonight's event. With these words, I thank you for your attention, and I now give the floor to the director of the Nobel Peace Center, Kjersti Fløgstad. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne, for the very warm welcome. San Sandegi Azadeh, Woman, Life, Freedom. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided that a Nobel Peace Prize for 2023 shall be awarded to Nargis Mohammadi for her fight against the oppression of women in Iran and her struggle for human rights and freedom for all. Her brave fight has cost her dearly. In total, the authorities have arrested her 13 times, convicted her 5 times, and sentenced her to a total of 31 years in prison and 154 lashes. Nargis Mohammadi is still imprisoned. These were the words used by the chair of the Nobel Committee, Berit Reiss-Andersen, on October 6th. Prior to these words, there had been a long and very secret process in the Nobel Committee. When the Nobel nomination deadline expired on January 31st this year, the committee had received in a total 351 nominations to work with. It was the second highest number registered candidates ever. And with that, a very cumbersome and very thoroughly process started by narrowing and narrowing and narrowing down to do a very thoroughly due diligence of all the candidates and also regarding of the cause. The decision was Nargis Mohammadi as the most worthiest winner of the Nobel Peace Prize this year. Many people ask, is the Peace Prize a blessing or a curse? Mostly it is a blessing. The laureates get focus on their cause, and they are invited to speak in all kinds of forums. It's a life-changing experience for most of them. But still, there are many examples where this attention made life much more difficult for the laureates. For Nargis' part, we do not know yet. What we do know is that both she and her family are very, very happy about the prize. She and her fellow imprisoned were celebrating in prison when they found out. And many of those who work with her say that this is something that will lead to more attention to her and the cause she's fighting for, and that is good. But we also know that the Iranian authorities are not particularly happy about the prize, and that they keep adding more and more punishment to her sentence for things she has written in prison or because she organizes demonstrations. Whether the prize makes it more or less likely that she will be released from prison soon is hard to know. You can also say that the last time Nargis was released from prison, in 2020, it was after massive postcard campaigns, among others from Amnesty International. So international attention can be good. And her receiving the Nobel Peace Prize puts definitely a pressure on the Iranian authorities. Nargis' journey as an activist began in her childhood, witnessing the Iranian Islamic Revolution at the tender age of 7 years. Her involvement in several student organizations during her university studies marked the beginning of her political activism. Despite her training as a physicist, it was through her journalism that Nargis found her true calling, writing for liberal and regime-critical magazines. In 2003, she became associated with the Center for the Defense of Human Rights in Tehran, a center that was founded by the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Shirin Ebadi. In 2011, Nargis was sentenced to several years in prison for her work aiding imprisoned activists and their families with food. The personal prize for her activism has been enormous. Nargis has not seen her children, who fled to Paris with her husband, in 9 years. Her story intervenes with the broader narrative of women life freedom movement in Iran, catalyzed by the tragic death of Mahsa Amini, or killing of Mahsa Amini, I would say, in 2022. From her prison cell, Nargis has led hunger strikes advocating for the rights of all inmates, and fiercely opposed solidarity, confinement, and the death penalty. The joy was uncontainable on October 6th. There has seldom been greater agreement and lack of objections to a peace prize. As far as I know, only the Iranian regime has criticized this prize. I am deeply grateful for you being here tonight, where we're going to talk about the story of our new Peace Prize laureate, who undoubtedly holds all qualities that we like to see in a Peace Prize laureate. She is courageous, she stands up tirelessly, and she really believes in a very important cause in a manner that is kind of hard for all of us to understand, how she is willing and able to take on all this enormous pressure. At the Nobel Peace Center, we will use most of the next 8 months to highlight her cause and facilitate her leadership out in the world. Tonight, we will delve a little bit deeper into Nargis' cause and her life and the ongoing situation of women in Iran. And we are honored to have 2 distinguished guests with us. Azadeh Pourzand, director of the Siamak Pourzand Foundation and a human rights researcher, brings her personal experience and expertise to our discussion. She came to the United Kingdom as a refugee at the age of 16. Yasmine Ahmed, director of Human Rights Watch in the United Kingdom, offers a wealth of knowledge from over 20 years as an international law lawyer and human rights advocate. Please join me on the stage and give them both a big hand. I think you can sit here, and then I sit a little bit more modest on the side here. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, Yasmine, what is the importance of the role played by women and girls in the women's life freedom movement in Iran, which is, widely regarded as a feminist revolution?
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me here. Very honoured to be on this panel and with all those in the audience here today, including, I know there are Iranian women activists who I'm very, very touched to be in the room with, along with yourself. Well, I think it can't be understated how significant it is that this revolution has been led by and for women. Obviously, we saw this revolution, and it didn't only start with the death of Mahsa Amini. Obviously, that's what ignited what we see, but the women's rights activism and movement in Iran has existed for decades. But what we did see was a moment of consolidating that movement, and certainly a moment where, and it's really unlike what we have seen anywhere. I think only paralleled maybe with Afghanistan in contemporary times, where women have led it. And it's not just, I think what's really significant about the women life and freedom movement is it's women are leading it, and it is for the liberation of women, but it is the entire society. And obviously my colleague will speak more to that than I, but what is beautiful to see is it actually men, people of different ethnic minorities, people of different groups, everyone, so many people in the Iranian society behind women as they lead this movement. And I think what's significant about the movement, and whilst the movement is so important in terms of the law on hijab, which is most significantly is about women's autonomy. It's their right to choose how they live, what dress they wear, but also the ramifications, the impact that has on their life should they choose not to wear it. So it's not just about wearing a hijab or not, but the social, educational, and other impacts for women in Iran should they choose not to. And obviously now we've seen the impact, because there are now hundreds of women who have been killed and other protesters who have been killed, thousands who have been imprisoned, some who have been subject to the death penalty, and the death penalty has been imposed and executed in certain circumstances. And I think also, and obviously my co-panelists will speak to this, but this is also about broader issues of women's rights in Iran as well. We know that the reproductive health and rights to access to reproductive health are severely limited in Iran, access to abortion, to contraception, so on and so forth. And so this is really about a moment which is amazing, being led by women, for women, with so many in the nation coming together to say, women have the right to exercise autonomy over their bodies and their lives. But it has been, as we'll hear, the cost, not only to Nargis, but the cost to many people in Iran has been their life, whether it's through being killed by the authorities or whether it's been imprisoned. And so it is incredibly inspiring. And we've seen, obviously, and we can talk to this, but a significant crackdown on the anniversary. We're not seeing Iran, the authorities, in any way seeming to respond other than, becoming more and more indignant. We've seen laws passed, which means harsher penalties. We've seen the harassment of human rights defenders, women's rights activists, journalists, the families of persons who were killed in the original protests. So unfortunately, the situation looks grim, but it certainly is, from my perspective, the optimism is the spirit, and the spirit has not by any means died.
Only since Nargis was announced as the Peace Prize laureate, her situation has kind of been more strict in prison, so that she's not anymore allowed to use phones, for instance, that she could. But picking up on what you said, that she only represents, that was one of your comments as well. I saw that Nargis just represent one among many unsung heroes in Iran. Do you think that their efforts will pay off?
I think those of us Iranians who believe in the peaceful struggle for human rights have no choice but to believe that these efforts will pay off. This is the only way to live. Otherwise, there will be no hope to move forward. And as Yasmine rightly said, it's so costly that only a deep belief in this hope that it will pay off will make you wake up every day and continue doing the small, tiny steps that you can, take forward and not give up. And I think in that sense, Nargis is really a true legend when it comes to not giving up and when it comes to using any situation that the regime puts her in as a playground for further activism and awareness raising and education and mobilization. So I think that's what, for me, makes Nargis a true representative of what we see among the younger generation in Iran and what we ideally should continue to see. So instead of collective despair, the motivation to sort of hold our hands together at the grassroots level and continue. For me, when the Nobel Peace Prize was announced, I just had this one moment where I just closed my eyes. I haven't been to jail in Iran, but everybody I know has been. But I just tried to imagine this prison that I have tried to imagine hundreds of times because of my work and my personal life. And just imagine, you're talking about prisoners in a prison in Iran celebrating the Nobel Prize, women, and feeling that it's also theirs. I don't think there is anything more powerful than this.
Well, that's very true. How do you in Human Rights Watch support the women in Iran? What can you do?
So we work on a number of different levels. One of the things, obviously, one of our key mandates at Human Rights Watch is to work with activists and work with communities who are impacted and document the harms. And while sometimes that can seem difficult because we don't see the change, it's very, very important, we certainly feel, and it's played out in history, that the facts of the repression, of the deaths, of the unlawful imprisonment, of the torture, continue to be documented. So that's one of our key roles. But another of our key roles is also to advocate, and to advocate for change, and to push other countries to do what they can. We were talking earlier, and I was saying there, in respect of Iran and a number of other countries like Afghanistan, it is very, very difficult because there are very few levers that we can pull that will be felt, unfortunately, by the Iranian government or the Iranian authorities. And so we do what we can, and part of what we do at Human Rights Watch is when we have a situation like Iran or Afghanistan, we also say part of our role, in addition to documentation, is to support activists on the ground and diaspora communities and activists that live within those diaspora communities to ensure that those pockets of resistance are watered and fed and given life and given support. They have their own the life, but given support that they need, because whilst that in itself is not going to change things tomorrow, that resistance and those pockets of resistance are incredibly important. And then we push governments as well. We say to governments, obviously in addition to sanctions on particular authorities and entities and persons, which the UK government, for example, has imposed, we used to say you should be, as a government, supporting human rights defenders. What are you doing to prioritise support to those defenders? What kind of technology, what kind of other support can you be providing them, and can you be providing the diaspora community to support them, is another critical factor. And we've been pushing with a number of organisations to say that human rights defenders and their support should be a pivotal pillar of our foreign policy and the way we approach foreign policy. So there are a number of ways. It is very, very difficult, but for us as Human Rights Watch, really our role is one where we are just looking to support and elevate the voices of our colleagues and our partners who are in fact on the front line and doing this work, and whose families and friends are doing this work.
It's a very obvious link between this year's Peace Prize and the last year's Peace Prize to Memorial Bialetsky and Center for Civil Liberties in Ukraine, where documentation is one of the key issues that they were concerned about, and also, of human rights violations and how human rights defenders can be defended themselves. So that was kind of a very clear link in what you're saying. We were talking a little bit about safety. What are your assessments regarding Narga's situation and safety in Iran, and how do you see the development from Iranian authorities with, surveillance and control and all of this?
Yes, I think Narges Mohammadi's situation is as worrying as it can get. As a prisoner of conscience, also now, a known figure internationally, and a daring one. She continues to write letters out of prison. She continues to have a voice, no matter how much they want to shut down this voice. I am worried for her, as I was before, but continue to worry for her. I think it's important here to acknowledge, the fact that I think someone like Narges Mohammadi in particular, has reached a point of her struggle where I don't think anything can scares her enough to silence her, right? So we established this, and we see it in all of her activism activities. That doesn't mean she doesn't suffer. The fact that she's so fearless doesn't take away the fact that as we speak today, having our wine and champagne, she's in prison you know, and sleeping on the floor on a bunker bed, that she hasn't seen her children, she won't be there for the Nobel Prize. So I think, I don't know what, and I really don't want to imagine what worse can happen to her. I'm very worried about her voice being absolutely silenced, because right now we still wake up and we hear from her somehow, right? So really, let's hope that at least continues. But I choose to respect her decision and to respect her fearlessness, and to just think she knows what she's doing, because I think she really does what she's doing. And I think in her imagination she has seen probably as dark as it can get, and she has accepted it as a prize. It breaks my heart to say this. And the Iranian regime has shown us that it has no boundary for violence. That said, I think we should just hope for the best, but also understand that her family may be in danger. We're talking about a regime that has operations outside of the country. There have been assassinations in Europe even in the past. So sitting here where we do, I think we should, like Yasmine was saying, we should do what we can to advocate for support for not only human rights and prisoners of conscience, but their families. And I think taking Nargis's example as an emblematic example of, you know, the two most precious human beings to her life are outside of the country. So let's always remember that and figure out ways to make sure that they are at least safe.
Yeah. She was on hunger strike just a couple of weeks ago, which kind of shows her fearlessness. Can you tell us why she was on?
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe everyone knows. I don't know. But
yeah, I mean,
to me, it was very kind of striking that she's so.
She was on hunger strike, and it was very worrying for many of us. I think people even tried to convince her not to be on hunger strike, and she ended up. I think they were depriving her, and this is a pattern. They were depriving her from medical attention, and ultimately she ended up in the hospital and received the attention and broke her strike. But
I think it was because she needed to wear hijab, wasn't that? To go to the hospital, and
yes.
she said, "I don't want to."
Yes, exactly. And what was incredible is after she broke her strike, she said, "You know, I'm not on strike anymore, and I did not wear a scarf to go to the hospital." And
so that was
and
kind
so
of
she's
cause.
very she. It's just so endearing that she also uses humor on this very, very violent regime, and she, in a way, she ridicules them with her civil disobedience, even when literally she's chained, you know, by that. So again, she could have, in my opinion, she could have not been on hunger strike and enjoy this enormous international fame that she enjoys. But soon after that, she uses it as a platform, again, for further activism, and puts her body and her health, you know, in danger. It tells you something about who she is. She will forever remain grassroots. And I think that's what's so beautiful about Nargis, not only fearless, but grassroots.
One other thing that she has been very fearless about is white torture, as she calls it. Can you tell us very short what's her struggle and fight? Is she wrote a book when she was out of prison?
I pass this to you.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
No. I mean, I actually think it's sits also with your expertise. With what I was sort of saying before, I think to you is also, you know, I think a regime like the Islamic Republic doesn't know where to put these incredible individuals like Nargis Mohammadi, because the moment, you know, so they put her in a solitary confinement. She used it as a way to actually live the experience of why solitary confinement is a form of torture, right? So this, Then they put her in a public ward of prison. She uses it as a field work to document what other women have gone through in solitary jail, as she calls it, white torture. And she uses her time in prison to write a book about it. Which, again, as Nargis's way of life goes, it's not a singular voice book. It's actually a collection of the voices of women, many of whom would have not reached the world and would not even reach beyond the prison cells. So I think it's a documentation effort, again, in a very grassroots manner and in a very daring and witty manner. You put me anywhere, I'm going to use it to document what you're doing to me and to my peers.
Yasmine, what can we do to support these brave women and their cause?
Well, I think, really, one of the main things is to keep the issue alive in our minds and in our hearts. I think this is wonderful that the Nobel Peace Prize Committee has awarded the Nobel Prize to Nargis, because one of the things that we can do is just to ensure that the suffering and that the resistance is heard and is vibrated and is something that's prominent in all our minds, and that the pressure is maintained. I think the worst thing that we could do now is to turn away, because, as we've heard, people have put their lives, their body, their family, everything on the line. So the least we can do is ensure that we keep attention on the issue. I think also doing what we can to continue, as I mentioned before, to support human rights defenders in whatever way we can that are within Iran and are still fighting the fight and struggling. And we know that's women, that's men, people from minority communities, and also supporting diaspora and family members. And obviously, I think really for me, with grassroots movements like this, it's us being humble and asking really, how do we help? What is it? It's for us to say, what do you need from us? What does that look like? And so as Human Rights Watch and personally, we're very much led by the movement, by the women and the men who are part of this movement, and saying to them, what does support look like? And also for me, at Human Rights Watch, I continue to ensure that these issues are at the forefront of minds of policymakers in government, that we're raising it in the media, that we're keeping alive these issues. Whilst I think the UK government have been fairly robust on this, we need to make sure that it remains that way, and that these women and these men that are giving their life continue to be heard and seen.
We will definitely do our part this next season. And I'm sorry, we need to wrap up. I would have loved to talk more with you. But just to close up, Azadeh, you told me when we were talking before that you have an experience as a refugee from Iran, like Nargis. You have also been a child of parents in prison. And now, this weekend, Nargis twins, they are 17 years old, Kiani and Ali, is coming to Oslo with the father to receive the Nobel Peace Prize on their behalf. Can you tell me a little, very short, about your experience being in that situation?
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to be short. As a child growing up, seeing your parents fighting for a bigger cause than you, I think can be confusing, because you need your parents, you need your mom, but at the same time, at least in my experience, you live also in a society where as you grow up, you realize something has to change, And in my case, I came to terms with the fact that my mom, my dad, they're not only mine, and they belong to something bigger than me. That did not make the suffering less. That did not make the fact that many times when my father was being tortured in Iran, when my mom was in solitary jail, somehow, and I don't know why, that's the therapist's job, I blamed myself. And when the regime harassed my family that if you continue your activism, we will kidnap your child, and they were worried about me, I would overhear them, I felt very guilty. I felt that I'm inconveniencing them. And I think the struggle, at least in Iran, that I'm familiar with, it's a struggle of families that, and as we saw, it's a generational, multi-generational struggle, but also a familial struggle for dignity, for peace, for, even if human rights is like they call it a Western concept, which is not, but it's really for dignity. It's just wanting to live your life in your living room, to light up a Christmas tree without being scared, right? It's like very, very simple things. And the Islamic Republic has become, unfortunately, very good at breaking families, at bringing trauma right in the living room of a multi-generational home. And I think as we celebrate Narges and others like Narges, we should always remember it's never about that one person. It's at the very least a nuclear family around that person, it's not more, that will experience trauma and PTSD for years and decades to come.
Thank you so much for bringing Narges to life for us, and also for sharing and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Azadeh, you will come up later, but just thank you so much. It was really very interesting. Thank you so much. With that, we bring this panel to an end, and before you will come up again, Azadeh, but before that, we will transition to Asbjørn Slettemark and his opening remarks. We're shifting our focus now from the topic of women and destinies in Iran to the realms of music, culture, and hope, emphasizing that these themes are interconnected. Asbjørn Slettemark is a Norwegian journalist, author, and podcaster known for his work in cultural journalism, especially with focus on film and music. I think this was a little bit underestimated because he's one of the most famous journalists on music in Norway. So we're very proud of having Asbjørn with us on this concept. His career has been spanning on several decades. Slettemark has established himself as a very respected and recognized figure in Norway. And his insight and ability to communicate complex subjects in an accessible manner have made him a sought-after commentator and expert in the field. So what particularly touches me, so with that, that was another, please welcome Asbjørn Slettemark on stage. Then